about motors in general, and I'll try to tell you about basically everything you need to know to run all of the motors in the bush camps. Gears are generally right here, neutral's in the middle. They'll only start in neutral. If you put them into forward, there's a lock there. So put it into neutral, here's your throttle. Towards you is faster. Basically give it a little bit of throttle. The choke is right here. It's basically pull your choke out, pump your ball a couple of times. Okay. Now, on a lot of these motors, the hose disconnects from the tank, and it also disconnects from the engine, and it'll fit in both ways. There's an arrow on the ball. You can zoom in on that arrow. Basically, the arrow's got to be going the same direction as the fuel goes to make it work. Okay. Now, also on this tank, there is a vent cap. I'll show you this vent cap. Now, for any of the motors that have basically no fuel gauge up on top, they're going to have a vent cap. And if you see your can starting to shrink or starting to swell, you've got to basically make sure that this vent cap opens up a little bit. Okay. Now, for this motor, very basic. You want to make sure that these are tight to the transfer. Okay. Make sure that these guys are nice and tight. And this is your kill switch right here, this red button. If this thing here comes out, the engine stops. It won't start until it goes back in. On the side of this motor, there's an up and down lever. Basically, to get this engine up, the lever does a half a circle. Okay. Basically, flip that lever up towards you. You lift your engine up. You're in a shallow water drive. Well, you should be. You should be able to go all the way up, and then you're locked up. And then to get the engine down, you flip that lever down, lift the engine up, and then she should drop down for you. Okay? And when you're riding around, you want to make sure that your lever's always in the up position, and then if you hit a rock, it'll bounce up and it'll stay up. Okay? Like I was saying, this is the up and down lever right here. That's the action. Okay? So to get the engine up and to lock it up, you pull it like this, pull the engine up. To get it back down, flip it down, lift the engine up, and drop it back down. Okay? So this is 6 horsepower, and this will pretty well complete the training. And as you can see, this particular boat's filled up with water. Now this boat's been stored here for a while, and the gas can's up on the seat just where it's supposed to be. Basically, if the gas can was down in the bottom of the boat, what would have happened is you would have had the gas can flip over in the water, and there would have gone water, would have gone in through the vent cap up top, gotten into the tank. That water would have gotten into the engine, and then basically the engine would have shut off because the water would have been in it. We would have been flying out engines to clean out the carburetor. Now, as you can see on this particular gas can setup, the hose disconnects from the engine and also disconnects from the gas can from both sides. There's an arrow on the ball, okay? Now the arrow's got to be going the same direction as the fuel goes to make it work. And like I said before, if your gas can's starting to shrink or swell, make sure that you loosen this vent cap up here. Okay, a couple other interesting things on these motors. Generally, these motors have some kind of a device right about here, and this is the device. If you turn it, if you tighten it, it adjusts how tight it is to turn the motor back and forth. So if your engine's overly loose or overly tight, look for some kind of a nut or some kind of a screw right here that you can tighten or loosen depending on whether your engine's too tight or too loose. So on these 6 horsepower Yamahas and on a lot of other engines, they've got a shallow water drive lever right here. Okay. Now on some of the Johnstons, they've got 2 levers, one as a shallow water drive and one to flip it all the way up. On these Yamahas, they've got a pin right here. So basically, you lift the engine up a little bit and you pull the pin out towards you, and then the engine will drop back down. Okay, so like I said, to get the engine down, you lift this engine up just a little bit. You pull this pin towards you, and then the engine will drop down. And the other lever here on the side is your shallow water drive lever. Okay, you want to make sure that when you're driving down the center of the lake that the engine's not in shallow water drive. So this is an 8 horsepower Yamaha. We've got these at a couple different camps. These are found at Bonner. They're also found at Lemoyne. On these ones here, they've got a couple different features that you should be aware of. The gears are right here on the handle. Okay, this little black knob right here is basically a throttle adjustment. It adjusts how tight your throttle is. Okay. Again, your kill switch is the red button. If this comes out, the engine stops and it won't start till it goes back in. Your choke's on the outside. Now, your up and down lever on this guy is found right here. Okay. Now, basically to get the engine up and down, you're flipping this lever up and down. Now, another kind of cool feature is this thing right here. This is a tension adjustment to turn the engine side to side on the boat. Okay. So, if you're finding it too loose, just push it away from you a little bit, and that'll tighten it up so it doesn't, so it's not so loose in the boat when you're turning side to side. You need to check just to make sure that the water spout is coming out of the back. So on all engines, you've got to have a nice good water spout. This 8 horsepower is running just perfectly, and as you can see when you're looking at the cap of this engine as well, when it was parked at some time in the past, the front of one boat was rubbing up against the back of the motor, so you want to make sure you got lots of space in between your boats when you're parking them. Now, the other thing, on these Yamaha 8 horsepowers, they are 4 strokes, and if they're 4 strokes, they're running all straight gas. Okay, so keep that in mind. Okay, so you want to make sure that when you're driving around with these motors that you've got them set up so that they can always pop up in case they hit a rock. Now, on some of these 8 horsepowers and some of the 15s, we've got the locks ground off. On others, we don't. So you want to make sure that your motor is always able to come up. Now, I just locked it up into the shallow water drive, and this is all the way up. You get this engine down, the lever's in the front, and you lift it up towards you, lift the engine up, drop the engine back down, and like I said, you want to make sure that you can always get the engine up in case you hit a rock. So in this one here, the lock's been ground off. On other 8 horsepowers, you want to make sure that this lever's down, and that way, for sure, it's not going to stay down and take the bottom end off if you do hit a rock. And the other thing is, on these 8 horsepowers, it's straight gas. And there's a couple 15 horsepowers at Nemaksenda and also at Ivanhoe that run off straight gas. But most of the motors in the bush are 2 strokes, which run on mixed gas. If there's any questions, ask us at the base. General models for the generators we're using. You check the oil in the back, right about here. Okay, want to be the cameraman? Okay, so you check the oil in the back, right about here. Open this guy up. Now, the oil should just say register on the dipstick. This one here is just a little bit full, but not bad. You want to make sure that when you're filling these up, that you don't tilt it up onto an angle and pour it in, because what ends up happening is you end up overfilling it. Like this one here is a little bit overfilled. You end up overfilling that generator, and then the oil gets plugged up into the spark plugs and into the other parts of the engine where it's not supposed to be. So don't overfill the generator. Now, on the front of this generator, right here, this is your choke. Okay, so to get this going, open up your choke. Here's your start. Shut it off. Make sure that this lever stays vertical up and down. Okay, this is to basically maintain the gas into it. This button here, a Econo throttle. You want to make sure that it stays Econo throttle on. And basically what that'll do is it'll idle down if you're not using full power. Okay. On your generators, you basically want to use them a little bit to fill up your water systems. Okay, so you'll turn your generator on. 5 minutes later, you'll have your water system filled up, and you'll have water pressure even without using your generator. But if you're going to have a couple guys taking a shower, then basically turn your generator back on and let it run, and then it'll automatically fill up your hot water tanks. On your generator, these guys all run straight gas. Your boat motors all run mixed gas. Okay.